is the first item on today's agenda. So in no particular order, I'm just going to call on folks that I see that are online today. And if you could just do a brief introduction with your name, the name of your organization, and perhaps a brief statement about how you serve in our region, that would be great. So I'm going to start with Ryan Gillespie.
Yeah, my
Good
name is
morning, Ryan.
Ryan Gillespie. I'm the Director of Facility Operations with United Community Health Center, and we serve the rural communities that don't have transportation and have a hard time getting into their primary care providers.
Great. Thank you so much, Ryan. Appreciate you being here today. So Irma.
Hello, good morning. I'm Irma Llamas with Hope Incorporated, and I am the fleet manager, and we provide transportation for everyone in behavioral health in 7 regions. I think 8 maybe.
Great. Thank you, Irma. I appreciate you being here as well. Great. And then I see Gabriel Gordon.
Hi, Janine. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi. My name is Gabriel Gordon. I work at Savvy Services for the Blind. I'm the transportation coordinator, and what we do is offer a variety of services for blind individuals. For the transportation department, that's doing things, providing transportation for mobility training, home visits, job development, and really anything you need a ride for. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Gabriel. Appreciate you being here. And then I see Jacqueline Sotero.
Good morning, Janine. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Good morning.
Hi. Hi, I'm Jackie Soltero. I am with Marana Health, and we are an FHQC within the Marana and Tucson area. And I am part of the finance team. I'm not part of the transportation team, but I'll try my best today to answer the department's if you have any questions for the department. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jacqueline. I appreciate you being here as well. And then I see Tony Bruno.
Good morning. I'm Tony Bruno. I'm the Associate Director here at Valley Assistance Services. We provide non-emergency medical transportation to doctor appointments and specialty visits from actually Rio Rico to Pima Mine Road, primarily serving Amado, Green Valley, and Sahuarita in Pima County.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate you being here as well. And then I see Shaylin.
Hi, everybody. It's Shaylin with Project and More, and we actually have after school and out of school time programs for kiddos with special needs, and we pick them up from school and do other transports if needed, but that's what we do.
Thank you, Shaylin. Appreciate you being here as well. And then Jessica Holsapple.
Good morning. I'm Jess Holsapple, and I'm with Fellowship Square Tucson, which is part of the larger Christian Care Communities, and we're Arizona's not-for-profit senior living, one of them, senior living provider all over the state. And I'm the grant manager.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. And then I see Linda Rodriguez.
Hi, good morning. My name is Linda Rodriguez. I'm working at Valley Assistance Services. I'm the transportation coordinator. So we do provide transportation for older adults that can no longer provide transportation for themselves to like doctor appointments and errands and stuff like that. So
Great. Thank you, Linda. Appreciate you being here as well. And then Steve Knapp.
Hi, I'm Steve Nath with Hope Inc., and I am Irma's assistant.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate you being here as well. And then Carl Steinecker. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that.
Yeah, hi. No, you got that right. It's Carl Steinecker. I'm a supervisor here at Oro Valley Transit, and we're a paratransit in service of the residents of Oro Valley.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate you being here as well. And then Kim Laurie.
Hi, my name is Kim. I'm with Rise Services in the QA department.
And can you share just a little bit about what Rise Services does?
Oh, sure. We have residential homes, day service, treatment services, in-home services.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate you being here as well. And then let's see, I see Francis.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Francis Anton, and I am the transportation manager here at Archie Hendricks Skilled Nursing Facility. And what we do is we transport or provide transportation for our residents to their appointments and dialysis treatment.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate you being here as well, Frank. And let's see if I'm missing anyone real quick, in case someone else joined while we were doing the introductions that I might have overlooked on accident. I think that's everyone. Am I missing anyone today? I don't think I did. All right. Keep me honest. If I miss someone, just let me know, and so I can make sure we do an introduction. So if anyone else joins us as we progress through the agenda, we'll try to circle back and allow them to have an opportunity to introduce themselves as well. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move forward with the next item on the agenda, which is the in-kind forum. And just for awareness, regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. And of course, PAG collects the data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you are paid with federal dollars, whether all or in part, please let us know now. You can either raise your hand or send me an email letting me know to not account for your time today in alignment with how you may be paid with federal dollars, so that we can keep our in-kind reporting accurate. So I see Tony raised his hand. All right, thank you. Let's see if there's anyone else. Right. Thank you for that. All right. And on that note, time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. And at the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. And of course, time spent working on PAG or RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. Right. We're going to go ahead and move forward with the next item on the agenda, which is agency fiscal and managerial responsibilities. So this topic is intended to be a discussion and also just kind of a learning opportunity from one another as we move the needle in sharing best practices and resources across different agencies. And then, of course, if there are some bigger questions that need to be addressed, we can take those into account and forward them up to ADOT as appropriate, or if it's something that I can answer either during this meeting or as a follow-up, we can attend to it accordingly. So under agency fiscal and managerial responsibilities, hopefully you revisited the ADOT guidebook on this, the fiscal year 25 grant guidebook. It's on page 31 if you want to kind of follow along at home, so to speak. But there's a long list of different items that are associated with this level of responsibility. And I believe there's 13, if I'm not mistaken. So with that, we're not necessarily going to go through all 13. I'm just going to probably highlight 5 or 6 or so of them and allow for that to kind of be our basis for discussion, but also just some healthy reminders in lieu of sending out a whole bunch of emails on this. So with that, I wanted just to kind of point out, when you look at the very first one on the list in the guidebook, it says demonstrating the financial and technical capacity to carry out the program. And most people kind of stop reading at that point. But if you focus on the remainder of that sentence, it says including the safety and security aspects of the project. So those are some pieces that you just want to make sure that you're taking a close look at and can identify those and of course have the appropriate documentation. If you have any questions about that, you can feel free to reach out to me offline and we can kind of talk through those pieces and forward anything appropriate to ADOT for them to clarify or give additional guidance around. The other part I wanted to kind of point to was with regard to administrative and management support. When we're talking about implementation of any project, most of the agencies that apply for FDA Section 5310 funding in our region typically apply either for vehicles, a capital asset, or dollars to keep those vehicles running safely and soundly. So under the veil of preventive maintenance dollars. So with that, there is an expectation in that project implementation element for you to have some administrative oversight to ensure that the vehicles are being properly maintained and of course operated in a safe manner, which is going to segue to some of the other elements that are in our agenda today. But documentation about vehicles being properly maintained is something that I would encourage all of you to revisit, take a look at your documentation, and how do you answer the questions, so to speak, if you were to be audited or have a site visit from ADOT. But also in your reporting in terms of vehicle inspection, sometimes a vehicle fails inspection because it requires maintenance of some kind or just kind of a follow-up because they couldn't identify, let's say, a fire extinguisher or what have you inside the vehicle. Some of those are easier fixes, but sometimes there is an element that they point out that does need fixing. So documenting that it did get fixed and of course communicating that element to ADOT is sometimes where there's a disconnect. Some agencies are really great about doing the follow-up piece and making sure that the items that were identified during inspection got addressed appropriately and timely, but also with that sometimes forget to actually inform ADOT that actually took place. So just kind of make sure as you look at your documentation that you are closing the loop on those things and that you have the documentation in your files that says that you did communicate that. So I just want to make sure that's an item that's not overlooked. With that, how your vehicles are operated in a safe manner is actually tying into an agenda item in terms of driver policy. So we're going to forego that one for just a little bit. The next one that I wanted to kind of draw attention to, and we're going to chat about all of these, is the preparation and submission of the required reports, both that they are accurate and that they are submitted in a timely manner. So most of you if you were submitting for reimbursement, do it quarterly. However, there are some agencies based on either being newer to the program or just in the way that they do their accounting, choose to do it monthly. ADOT doesn't necessarily tell you it has to be monthly or it has to be quarterly for your reimbursements. They just ask for you to choose one and stick with that one. For newer agencies, whether they're new to the program or they've had a lot of turnover, and whether their agency's been with the program for a long time, but the people that are now in charge of the program are relatively new to the compliance elements of the program, some will choose to start out doing their reporting that's associated with reimbursements on a monthly basis until they kind of get in the rhythm and feel comfortable with it. And then at that juncture, they will choose to either stick with monthly or they'll choose to communicate to ADOT that they're going to switch to quarterly and then stick with quarterly. So again, one isn't necessarily better or worse than the other. It's just important that you choose one that works for you and you stick with it. And if you opt to start out monthly and then eventually switch to quarterly, that part's clearly communicated to ADOT so they're aware that this was an intentional decision and moving forward it will be consistent with whatever the new approach is. The other part is just making sure that reports in general, meaning like the quarterly reports that you have to submit to ADOT, are done both accurately and timely. And you probably received an email from me clarifying some of the disconnects that are common in terms of who has to submit a quarterly report and who has to submit one that's considered performance and one that's considered progress. And so if you have any questions about that particular email, to make sure you understand which bucket, so to speak, you fall in to, let me know. Most people fall under the performance element, and that should be pretty much every agency, whether you've recently applied for funding or it's been many moons since you applied for funding. If you have an FTA Section 5310 funded vehicle in your fleet, you are likely still required to submit those reports. And so we can kind of unpack that if you're uncertain, but that's perhaps the biggest takeaway that you can have from the email that I sent out. The next piece I wanted to kind of go over is making sure that documentation about your equipment being in good order. So your pre and post-trip inspections are kind of that litmus test that agencies do, and it's required to identify quickly whether or not a vehicle is in good working order and it's safe to be out on the road. And that if there's anything that needs to be done to make sure that it's repaired or maintained in accordance with not just ADOT's expectations, but the manufacturer's recommendations, that those elements are identified early, and so that you're meeting the expectation around that. And with that, if you have a wheelchair accessible vehicle, whether it has a lift or a ramp, it's a two-pronged approach. One, you need to make sure that those elements are maintained appropriately, but also that your staff is properly trained on how to use those particular elements. And then the last thing is just about expenditures in terms of making sure that you're keeping tabs on your expenditures. So, for example, if you applied and received, let's say, $10,000 in preventive maintenance, are you on track to spend down those funds by the end of the time frame associated with that award? And are you doing your reimbursement requests both accurately and timely and commensurate with that project, and any reporting or documentation that needs to support that? Some agencies have done really well in that space in terms of being consistent and illustrating that they've been good stewards of federal dollars. Other agencies have struggled a little bit in the consistency, and sometimes that's just based on their patterns of when they do some of their maintenance relative to how they use their fleet. And so with that, if you fall into one of those categories where you feel like you may not be as consistent as you like, but there's a solid answer for that, I just encourage you to communicate that to ADOT in writing so that they have an awareness of the why, but also if they have any questions or have some guidance on how to navigate that differently, it allows for there to be open communication about them. So on that note, those are just kind of 5 or 6 of the elements that are of the 13. And I just wanted to kind of open it up to see if anyone had any questions or just thoughts on how they navigate those pieces, because we do have agencies, like I said, that are new to the program. You know, this is their kind of their first year executing the requirements after receiving an award. And then we have agencies that have been with the program a while, but the staff that's managing the program is relatively new. So whether you're seasoned or not, I think there's just value in sharing, you know, what works well in your organization, but also if there's something that's not working well or you have questions, you need clarification, this is a great time to bring those questions up, because what you might find out is that you're not alone. Other people have a similar question, and we can make sure that those questions, if necessary, get elevated to ADOT to get the guidance or clarification that's needed. So with that, I'm just going to kind of open it up. I'm just curious how agencies are addressing making sure that their quarterly reports are done timely and accurately, but also that safety and security aspect of the financial and technical capacity that's listed in the guidebook. So I'm just going to open it up, and if anyone has any thoughts or best practices that they use to meet that expectation and would like to share it, I'll open up the floor now for that. Oh, and I see Krishana join. So while everyone's thinking about what they're going to share, I'm going to let Krishana introduce herself. Hi, Krishana. Good morning.
Good morning. Sorry, you're cutting in and out a little bit on my end. But I'm Krishana Guy. I'm the grant writer for the City of Tucson Department of Transportation and Mobility, working closely with SunTrans.
Great. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. All right. I'll see if there's anything on my end in terms of why I might be cutting out. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing that or not. I'm going to ask my team behind the scenes to take a look at that and see if they see anything on our end that might be contributing to that. So thank you for that feedback. All right. I see Shaylin's hands up. Go ahead, Shaylin.
Hi.
Hi, Shaylin.
So yeah, so I mean, we did have an audit not too long ago. So we were able to kind of add some new things that they recommended, but as far as our vehicles being in working order, we do the pre/post trip documentation every time we use a vehicle, which, there's parts of it that here's what you need to have with you, all these different elements. Then we do like the 360 walk around, make sure there's not a low tire or anything. What we need for the transport, who we're picking up, those kind of things. And then, we check everything, windshield wipers, heat, cool, wheelchair lift. We use that more when kids are with us all day long, but we decided that we still check it at least 2 or 3 times a week, even when we're not using it every day. Like this week, we're using it every day. So we gotta just do those things. If anything, it sounded like the brake brakes were squeaking or had to put air in the tire, we usually, those get submitted daily, and especially if there's problems, and then we take it from there, and we usually just take care of the problem as soon as we possibly can, put it in our vehicle maintenance repair file, and then kind of sum all that up at the end of a quarter and include it with our vehicle maintenance log. So that's kind of what we do, which works for us. We kind of tried to kind of integrate both the ADOT requirements and the DDD requirements. So hope that helps.
Thank you. No, thank you. I appreciate that. I think you brought up some good points in terms of, there's always things you can learn from going through an audit in terms of, where you could sharpen your saw, but also with that, we're leaning into a warmer season, right? It's coming up quick. And so being cognizant of like air conditioning systems and stuff like that, being very proactive and identifying potential hiccups early so that all of our riders can be in vehicles with, functioning air conditioning, but also as temps fluctuate, air pressure and tires and things of that nature can change. And so just always being mindful of those particular nuances, so that, vehicles are on the road that are safe, but also, comfortable for our passengers. And with our extreme heat, temperatures, air conditioning is more than just comfort, right? It becomes like a safety issue as well. So being mindful of that, a lot of people might not necessarily initially make the connection that air conditioning could also be a safety issue, and that can be easily overlooked. So what are some proactive elements that you have in place to make sure your HVAC systems in your vehicles are prepared, for the heat that often comes living in Arizona? So if anyone has any thoughts on that, on what they do in their organization to be very proactive about different elements, that would be a good element to share. So thank you, Shaylin. Carl, do you have anything to share? I know, being in paratransit, that and the level of trips that you provide on a regular basis, is perhaps a little different than some of the other providers in our region that aren't operating in the public paratransit space. Do you have anything to share that your organization does to support different efforts?
Somewhat in echo of the last speaker, we do exhaustive pre-trip and post-trip inspections. We're very cognizant that the hot weather's coming, so we make sure to check the AC units. We're right now in the middle of doing all of our lift inspections on all the buses to make sure that they're working properly. Lastly, we have pretty much an open forum here for the drivers to come in and bring up any kind of safety concerns that they might have. And we address those as needed. Anything from good handholds in the bus to any other kind of severe tripping issues that might occur, like queue strengths out and loose. We try to deal with any safety concern as quickly and as well as we can.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. I know you have a lot of incentives, so to speak, to encourage your drivers to identify problems early, and especially like during pre and post trip inspection. So if any of the agencies have some questions or thoughts about how they might improve their pre and post trip inspection process, I know Carl and Michael Alexander from Town of Oro Valley have always been very generous in sharing what they do. So I'd encourage you to reach out to them and see what you can learn, and vice versa. You might have some things that you've incorporated that the Town of Oro Valley might find valuable and want to incorporate as well. So I just encourage people to reach out to one another. If there's a specific agency that you'd like to reach out, but you don't necessarily have their contact information, feel free to reach out to me and I can make those introductions. I think there's value in looking at agencies that are of similar size as yours or serve in, a similar part of the region, meaning rural or urban, but also there's value in reaching out to agencies that look very different than yours, because they might have their eyes on different elements that you're not necessarily always focused on. And then, you have an opportunity to say, you know what, I never really gave thought to that. That's a good point. We should try to incorporate that into our programs or our initiatives. So please keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and if I don't see any other hands up, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next item on the agenda. Okay, so like I said earlier, we were going to kind of put a couple pieces on hold, so to speak, because I knew it was going to be on the agenda later. And so this is one of them. It's the driver training and safety policies and practices. And in my email in advance of this meeting, I encouraged everyone to have their driver training and safety policies available for this meeting so that we can have a fruitful discussion. But to set the stage for that discussion, and for those of you that are playing along at home, if you haven't already gathered up your driver training policies, this would be a good time to do that. If you remember in the grant application, especially for those that are considering applying in federal fiscal year 27 for FTA Section 5310 funding, you might remember, especially if you've applied in the past, that in the civil rights section of the application, there is a very specific list of questions that asks, is your staff receiving these types of trainings? And there's a big list of types of trainings. And then, of course, there's a space for other where you can describe additional trainings that you offer your staff. So some of the most common elements that are listed in the grant application are like PASS training, which is passenger assistance sensitivity training, passenger assistance service and safety training. And then there's the START training, which is safety training in rural transit, and it's through RTAP, and most people are familiar with RTAP. And then it goes through from customer service to biohazard training, safety, CPR, reasonable suspicion, and drug and alcohol training. And I know ASTA conference, which is coming up, has drug and alcohol training available as a subset. So with that, if you need any additional information on how to get plugged into that, today would be a great day to do that because there's very specific deadlines with that. And then, of course, any kind of 24-hour behind the wheel training, of course, the pre and post trip inspections, which we just discussed, and then just in general, transit operational policies and procedures. So with that, I know recently some organizations have done a great job of reaching out to me and saying, hey, you know, we're preparing well for our next grant cycle, and we're aware of this section in the application, and we want to serve up the best application that we can. And we're just curious what other agencies are doing for their driver training policies, and who could we reach out to just kind of ask them what they're doing and compare and contrast it to what we're doing so we can learn from each other. So I wanted to encourage everyone to do that. And so a great place to start would be just to kind of talk through it today during this particular meeting and open up the conversation to continue offline between different agencies. So I know Marana Healthcare Center, I think, is still on the call. I'm not sure if
Yes, I'm here,
still.
Jenny. Yes.
All
I'm
right.
here.
So Jacqueline, I know you had some time constraints today. So I wanted to kind of reach out to you and allow you to have an opportunity just to kind of give maybe like 3 or 4 bullet points of things that you do in your organization regarding driver training that you find of value. And then if agencies want to reach out to you specifically to understand it more fully, that they could.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that we do is that we that our recovery coaches here at Marana Health, they, once a client is signed up for transportation, they make sure that the drivers or the whoever's transporting the client is able to understand everything that's going on, like medical history with the client. That's really important. Just letting them know about their specific, if there's special instructions or anything that needs to be spoken about. So there's a big communication between the recovery coaches and the drivers in that way. Also too, we log all of our information into Athena One Practice. We try, it's all medically documented and everything like that, and secure. And one of the things that we always encourage our drivers is to just report patient safety concerns. If there is anything, if any patients that are at risk or they're displaying risky behaviors, just to let the transportation department know as soon as possible. Vice versa, also getting back to the recovery coaches.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's helpful. I'm going to just open it up to see if anyone else has any other elements they would like to share in terms of what they're doing for driver training, et cetera, in their organization. I'll open it up to maybe Steve or Irma or Tony. Go ahead, Tony.
So we're moving forward on several fronts right now. We have purchased a dispatch program that includes tracking our drivers and letting us know. And I'll say our drivers right now are all voluntary. And so it records where they're at in their trainings, past training, various things like that. But we also are now conducting a monthly transportation meeting with quarterly trainings and going across specific issues that we've come across with our drivers. And that includes some mental health first aid and how to do de-escalation with some of our clients, as well as providing additional referral opportunities through some of our RN advocates to keep everything online and as further training for our volunteer drivers.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you sharing that as well. All right. Anyone else that would like to share what they're doing in their organization regarding driver training policies?
Hi, Janine, this is Steve. I wanted to say thank you to everybody that reached out when I put out that request. We always thought we had a pretty comprehensive training package, and I believe we do, but our policies were a little toothless. And so what we were looking to do was to help staff take a little bit more notice when they were driving their vehicles. We just had a huge increase in people skirting the speed limit and accidents. And so we didn't want to be out of step with the industry, but we wanted to make sure that we had a little bit more teeth added to our policies in order to help drivers understand they really needed to bring safety to the forefront of their job every day. So I do appreciate everybody helping out with that.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, for giving some praise around that. There was a lot of organizations that really chimed into that conversation or asked me privately, hey, can you partner me with another agency so that we can just kind of talk through, what each other are doing. And it's always great to see that. I think it serves both organizations well. And of course, it's something you can document in your grant application for coordination, but also in the application where it has the section for other and you get an opportunity to describe it. Those are just great opportunities for you not only to share with ADOT other elements that you're doing, but even elements that you've incorporated through coordination of resources by having these different discussions, whether right now, right in the moment, but also just kind of offline. So I encourage you to document those things, keep note of the different conversations you have, what you've changed, what you've updated, and take advantage of that information and incorporate it into any future applications for funding. And ADOT does a pretty good job in the grant application to allow for some flexibility for you to speak to those things. And I think because the application is competitive and it's not an easy lift, sometimes we just kind of want to be done and we miss out on these different opportunities to really showcase things that we're doing well, things where we're perhaps exceptional, we go above and beyond, or even things that we've really taken some great opportunities to reach out to other organizations and kind of sharpen our saw and learn from one another. So don't take those pieces lightly. Take advantage of that opportunity and of course, document them and then remember to kind of speak to them as you see fit in your future grant applications. So, all right. And then I just want to point out that if you do a lot of your training in-house, that's great. But if you also do training by partnering with another agency saying, hey, can we send some drivers to your training, even if it's just for them to learn like how you implement your training, and then we can kind of take some stuff back. Or if you work it out with them and you're going to actually send them to the training that this other organization does, and you've kind of come to some kind of agreement on that. Those are other things to kind of speak to in your grant application, because it does ask whether or not the training is completed kind of in-house or if you do it somewhere else. And if so, where is that somewhere else? So it's just another way to kind of echo and remind ADOT in this competitive grant the things that you're doing well and where you kind of gone above and beyond. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move forward with the next item on the agenda. So thank you again, Steve, for sharing that.
Hey, Janine.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Shaylin. I kind
Hi,
of just
Shaylin.
wanted to share something that
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
that Project Amore is very small. I mean, our transportation, it's all in close proximity. So I didn't know if there's any other agencies like that, but when we did our audit, we actually, we had big discussions about the past training, which is great training, absolutely. But it really kind of was more than what we needed, but it kind of crossed a lot of check marks. But I was able to actually go through my liability insurance company, and they partner with an agency, and so we reviewed all the trainings that the other agency did, and it's most of it's online. We do a lot of training that's not online because we have to be trained with working with people with disabilities. So, but as far as driving, we have like 9 different modules, and the company that they work with, I mean, it will remind staff, okay, your year's up, you got to do all this training again. So we're really happy with that. So everybody's kind of done that. Not to mention, we only have 3 drivers, so it's not like we have a big fleet or anything. We've got 2 vehicles and 3 drivers, and so I just kind of wanted to share that because, sometimes the 24-hour dispatch and things like that, those don't always work for the smaller agencies. So I just thought I'd share that. So it's worth looking at, and the module with the company, seeing that I pay so much for my liability insurance, they don't charge me for it. So it's kind of nice. So I just thought I'd share that.
No, that's great. I think that's a good perspective to share. One, just, maybe a learning opportunity that through insurance, sometimes there's other resources available that people might not know to even ask about. So perhaps people might be curious on how that conversation came to pass. But the other piece is just recognizing that we have agencies of all sizes serving in very distinct ways throughout our region. And some agencies have, really great capacity, meaning significant because they're a very large agency. And then other agencies are serving in great ways, but their capacity looks very different relative to their fleet size and where they serve geographically. So there's just great opportunities to learn from one another, because one of the things that I believe is true when you're a small organization, you have smaller budgets. Sometimes you have to be much more resourceful than perhaps agencies that have, bigger budgets. But in the same breath, large organizations have much larger fleets and far more drivers to be diligent around. And so both parties can learn from one another. So just because you serve in urban doesn't mean you can't learn from some of the folks that are in the rural areas, or just because you're large doesn't mean you can't learn from a small organization, and vice versa. So just encourage people to reach out and see what you can take away from different organizations, because you'd be surprised. There's usually something that you're like, what, that was a good use of time. We can learn from that. All right. So moving to the next item on the agenda. Thank you, Shaylin, again. The next item on the agenda is FTA Section 5310 proposed projects, or sometimes I use the word forecasted project. So this is you thinking about what projects you might consider applying for in the next grant cycle, which is going to come up quick. Fuzzy math, this time next year, the grant cycle would have already closed, meaning you've already submitted your application and you would likely be in the cure period for that. So if we look at the calendar, yes, it feels like a year, because we're just going very linear in that way. But if you really think about all the things you need to do to be prepared for that grant cycle, with the holidays that sneak up on us really quickly come October, really you just have basically from now to October to really get everything ready, so that once the holidays pass and you wake up and it's 2027 and you get the announcement that the NOFA has been published, the Notice of Funding Availability, and that the grant cycle either has started or is about to start, that you have a lot of confidence that you're ready. So with that, the proposed projects, or the forecasted projects, in order to be eligible for consideration in the grant cycle, they have to be listed in our coordinated plan. And I said the word our coordinated plan because I'm referring to the PAG region's coordinated plan. If your agency is also applying for funding in other regions, whether it be in SEGO or NACOG or where have you, it will be just as important for you to also ensure that those projects are listed in their coordinated plan. So you will need to reach out to the respective mobility manager for that region that you're also applying for funding in to ensure your proposed projects or forecasted projects get inserted into their coordinated plan. As a reminder, the MAG region is a direct recipient of FTA Section 5310 funds, so they have a different timeline. So if you're intending to apply for 5310 funding in the MAG region, you will need to reach out to MAG to follow their process and their timeline. But the day to start preparing for this basically was yesterday, right? The start of the year. But knowing what the countdown is, now is the time to really start looking at those proposed projects. So when we think about that and the emphasis being that it needs to be in the coordinated plan, I wanted to bring that to light and say, well, what does that mean when we say that it needs to be in the coordinated plan? So typically what I do in the PAG region is I ask for everyone to submit their proposed projects. And for those that have applied before, you know kind of the format of that. If you're new, we can definitely talk about it and help you bridge any gaps in understanding around that. But I will ask for it to be in a very specific format so that it makes it easy for us to put it into a table and follow our own internal process for having it put into the coordinated plan. I typically have a date, a deadline for you to submit those projects so that we have a sufficient enough time to follow our internal process and get them into the coordinated plan to meet ADOT's expectations of us. And if you do not meet that deadline, then it won't get into the coordinated plan. And therefore, again, in order for it to be eligible for consideration, your project has to be in the regional coordinated plan that you're applying funding for relative to each region. So, as you might remember with that, is that in the scoring criteria for your projects that you might apply for, one of the things that's asked, regardless of what type of funding you are asking for, whether it be for a replacement vehicle, a new vehicle, preventive maintenance dollars, operating dollars, doesn't matter. The rubric or the scoring criteria always asks whether or not your project aligns with the coordinated plan. And your opportunity is to basically answer that question, not just yes or no, but hopefully yes, right? And how does that statement, or how is that statement true, right? What evidence there is that to support that your project aligns with the coordinated plan. So you need to be familiar with the coordinated plan to know how it aligns, but you also need to make sure your projects are in the coordinated plan. So most people say, well, where do I find the coordinated plan? And that's a great question. It's on the PAG website under what we do. And then if you look under Human Services Transportation, you will find the link to the coordinated plan. If you can't find it, feel free to reach out to me and I'll guide you through it lockstep, and it's pretty easy to find. So with that, in the coordinated plan, there are some things that you can look at to ensure that you understand what the regional needs are, what are the goals, what are the priorities of the region, what are the funding priorities, et cetera, so that you can use that information to validate your project, so to speak, right? To show the alignment. So I'm going to send out an email with kind of a cheat sheet, if you will, that says, you know, here's a great place to start in terms of page numbers for you to kind of get your arms around what are the needs in our region and how you can use that information to show alignment when you do potentially apply for funding in the upcoming grant cycle. But there are a variety of pages that you can look at, but I also want you to be able to see how projects have been listed in the past and how that aligns with my ask for your forecasted projects or your proposed projects. So as you read that information in the coordinated plan, if you have any questions about your forecasted projects, please reach out to me early, because if there is a particular question that I'm not able to answer, it's best served by ADOT to answer. We want to make sure we give ADOT sufficient enough time to do their research and get back to us and give you a good answer, but also then you can use that information to do whatever your next steps are so that you're prepared. And this is especially true for those that might apply for either mobility management funds, operating, or non-ITS projects. Those are the types of projects that usually shape the most questions, and want to make sure that they have all of the pieces in their front view in terms of what they need to tackle in advance of the grant cycle. And that's not to say that vehicles don't have their own questions, but as a rule of thumb, we tend to get the most questions in the other funding types. So regardless of the funding type, the things I want you to walk away with today is you have to have your proposed projects in the coordinated plan. There will be a deadline for that. So if you haven't started thinking about what you might apply for, now is the time, because with that is all the expectations that will be in the grant application, local match requirements, budgeting, everything that comes with it, but also showing alignment to the coordinated plan. So you want to get your arms around, what does that mean? And what questions do I still have? So look for an email from me, giving you a cheat sheet of places you can quickly go to get your arms around the coordinated plan, but that's not an all-inclusive list. Obviously, you can look at the entire plan, but if time is of the essence and you only had a few places to look in terms of your time constraints, these might be a good place to start. All right. Any questions on that in terms of what is meant by your projects being listed in the coordinated plan, or showing alignment to the coordinated plan? Any questions on that? Looking to see if I see any hands up.
This
What's
is
that?
Mike Oro Valley.
Hi, Mike.
Hello. So a question, I don't know if this is the right meeting or not, but the vehicles.
Mhm.
Maybe some in the group have experienced this already. For your next grant,
Mhm.
what vehicles do we ask for to replace? We are still waiting for vehicles from the 23-24 grant that we received Exhibit A's on.
Mhm.
So, because we have to list VIN numbers that we're replacing, we still haven't got those vehicles. I've been asking since May of last year, what's the status? And they're working on it. It's been over a year. So do I put in to replace those vehicles again? Are they still in what are we replacing next?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It's actually one of my proposed agenda items for our upcoming statewide mobility managers meeting, but also just internal discussions with ADOT about that. So I'm hopeful we'll have sound answers from ADOT to that very question, Michael. So I'm glad that you're bringing it up. Because if other people have similar questions or questions that are tangential to that, that'd be a great opportunity to email me and say, hey, can we add this to the layer of the conversation in that space? What I will say is historically, the rule of thumb has been in terms of what you apply for, you ask for what you need, right? So you can't provide service with something that doesn't exist, right? So in your driveway, like it hasn't, you don't have it yet. So there was a time when ADOT had challenges procuring vehicles because of Buy America, et cetera. And we went through a thing where they had to make some tough decisions and agencies basically reapplied for those vehicles. I don't know that that's the circumstance with this. So to your point, Michael, you know, if you're still waiting on a vehicle and you're trying to decide which VIN number you're going to say you're going to replace, it hinges on the answer to the first question, right? Which is, when can we expect these other vehicles? Are they coming? Because this is from a grant cycle that, you know, is in our rearview mirror. So I'll get the answer to that question, hopefully sooner than later. But if you don't get the answer, feel free to remind me, because I'm human. Sometimes I need, you know, someone to kind of keep me honest in that, right? Like, hey, have we heard anything about this? And I'm like, oh, that's a good reminder. Let me go back and ask again. So we'll try to unpack that. I'm hopeful we'll have an answer soon, because regionally, we're not the only region that's asked that question. So I'm pretty sure ADOT's aware that that's a pressing question and it deserves an answer. So I'm hopeful we'll have an answer soon. But I see a hand up still. Is that Michael? Is that your hand still up
Yeah,
from
just
before?
a
Okay.
follow up to that same
Yeah.
question. That not having the previous vehicles also can change the local match.
Right.
So we're trying to plan out the next local match. Well, if we're not getting vehicles, we don't know what the last vehicle was. So
Right. And then the
normally add
timing
like
of
7%
when the
to it.
contracts are locked in with ADOT influences whether or not there might be another price increase. And if there's another price increase, that influences local match.
Correct.
So yes, I'll do my best to see how we can kind of push on getting an answer to that question, because there's lots of pieces to it. It's, you know, what vehicle do you designate as the one to replace, but how do we appropriately plan for local match and budgets and all the things that are important for agencies to make strong decisions on, but also, you know, relative to their internal approval process. No one wants to go to whoever is in the next chain of command for that approval process without the right information to make a sound decision around. So I'll do my best to see how we can get that answer from ADOT sooner than later. I'm hopeful that we should have it here soon, because I've seen a lot of invoices go out. So that says to me that they're in that space of championing all that and figuring those pieces out. So we'll kind of stay tuned, right? We're going to just see, you know, if that answer comes pretty quickly. I'm hopeful it will, but I'll still be good about reminding that we still need the answer on that.
That manufacturers update their pricing every May.
Right.
So
yeah,
this coming May will be the second price increase since we received the Exhibit A.
Right.
So I have no idea what the local match is going to be.
Yeah. And I think I have emails from different organizations that have posed that question that you presented, Michael. So I'm going to use those illustrations to kind of further the importance and the significance of this. Not that ADOT doesn't grasp it on their own, but just as a nice reminder and context and whatnot is always helpful. So I'll do my best to get an answer. And we'll see what happens. Any other questions or concerns in this space?
Hey, Janine, I just wanted to speak to that because we're kind of in the same boat as Michael and his crew. And I know we're almost out of time, but I will send an email later with some information I've received that might be helpful.
Perfect.
And feel free to share it with anybody else.
Yeah, that'd be great. So if anyone else has any questions, concerns, or thoughts around this that would help to shape the conversation, or questions that I have with ADOT or to ADOT in this space, feel free to email me. And then I can serve the questions up in a general sense and say, like, for instance, you know, here's an example. You know, I want to be mindful of budgets. I want to be mindful of how, you know, local match could increase if the price increases. So let's see how we can help everyone be successful in this. So whatever you can share with me that would offer good context relative to your question, I'd be grateful because then it allows me to be more intentional with the questions that I ask and get, sound answers in a timely fashion, hopefully from ADOT. So, all right, anything else before we move to the next item on the agenda? In next meeting, I'm going to try not to hit this one section of my desk that apparently I could tell now that it jiggles my camera. So I apologize that there's been that vibration, so to speak. So I'll do better next time. All right, so we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is adjournment. So this concludes the Mobility Coordination Working Group meeting for today, March 19th, 2026. I really appreciate all of you being here, and let me know how I can be of service, and feel free to reach out with any questions or concerns. Appreciate all of you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Janine.